Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with CitraFork Lime 3DS. And Lime 3DS just got its very first release. So at the time of filming, Lime 3DS 2105 is the latest release. They say here they've done some rebranding, and this is the initial release of Lime 3DS. The above patch notes are relative to Citra 2104. Like other forks of emulators out there, we'll have to wait and see if Lime 3DS can stand the test of time, and if they can improve on what Citra was. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link to it in the description below, and feel free to check it out. It's 100% free and open source. And speaking about improvements, next up we're talking about PlayStation 2 emulation on Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, and in your web browser with Play. And Play just released version 0.64. So in terms of improvements, we've got a whole bunch of new verified playable games. The King of Fighters 2002 Unlimited Match, Impossible Mission, Cherry Blossom, Under the Sun, Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter, and a whole bunch more. Compatibility for Play has been increasing. Out of 2,567 games they've tested, 42.38% are considered playable. And Play does not require a BIOS file. It is worth pointing out that on the Google Play Store at the time of filming, there isn't an update to Play. The last release here was August 10th of 2023. I'm hoping this gets updated fairly soon, but if it doesn't, you can head to their website. Play is 100% free, it's open source, and it's getting better and better. Next up, we're talking about Sega Mega Drive or Genesis emulation with ClownMDEmu, and ClownMDEmu just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 0.7 is the latest update, and I would argue this update is actually pretty big. So on top of fixing stuff for a whole bunch of games here, like Afterburner 2 Jim Power, Outrun, and Outrun 2019, they have vastly improved Mega CD support. Sonic CD is now playable from beginning to end, aside from its special stages. And they've also added 6-button controller emulation. If you haven't guessed already, ClownMDEmu is in its very early stages of development. It is available for PC. It's also available in your browser. It's 100% free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. And on a quick side note, there's a real nice write-up about their version 0.7 release, which I'll also link to. If you wanted to learn more about this emulator, if you wanted to see some nice pictures and even video, there's a whole ton of detail in here. It's well written, and I do recommend checking it out. But moving on, and next up we're talking about MartyPC, which is a cross-platform IBM PC emulator written in Rust for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So at the time of filming, MartyPC version 0.2.0 is the latest release. And this is the first release since July of last year, and this is a massive release. They say here it's been nearly 9 months since the last release of MartyPC. During that time, I've rewritten or refactored much of the emulator. So as for some of the new features, we've got new scaling modes, display apertures, we've got multi-window support, and we've got shader support. On top of that, there's new ROM definition frameworks, so ROM set definitions are no longer hard-coded. There's new machine configuration framework, new resource manager framework, and the EGA video card is now back. There's a new keyboard system, a whole bunch of debugger and GUI improvements, a bunch of front-end bug fixes and improvements, and a whole bunch of core bug fixes and improvements. This is a massive release. And speaking about releases, next up we're talking about NanoBoyAdvance, which is a cycle-accurate GBA emulator. And you guessed it, NanoBoyAdvance just got a brand new release. So at the time of filming, NanoBoyAdvance 1.8.1 is the latest update. And this isn't the biggest update, but there is a nice quality of life feature here. They've implemented an option to pause the emulator when the window is inactive, which I like quite a bit because I tend to multitask when I'm trying to play some games. Next up, we're quickly talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions, Linux Mint. And Linux Mint just shed some light on their next new version, version 22. So with the upcoming Linux Mint 22, it appears that installation sizes are going to be a little bit smaller. They appear to be removing language packs that may not be needed after installation. Pipewire will be the default sound server, and it will be based on Ubuntu 22.04 and will be using Linux kernel 6.8. Fun fact here, and no surprise, the most popular version of Linux Mint is Cinnamon by a pretty wide margin. And I'm paying close attention to this graphic, specifically LMDE. LMDE stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Linux Mint Debian Edition, depending on how you want to interpret that. That is the non-Ubuntu based version of Linux Mint, and I'm hoping to see this percent growing in the next few months. Now, I don't want to say I'm against Ubuntu, but Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu, which is based on Debian, and LMDE is just kind of cutting out the middleman. Next up, I think this is something to be excited about. There's a brand new Prince of Persia on the horizon, and apparently it's being developed by Evil Empire, the studio behind Dead Cells. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of surprised about this news, considering Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown has recently released. This new game's working title, according to Insider Gaming, is The Rogue Prince of Persia, and it will be a roguelike, which makes a ton of sense given the fact that Evil Empire was behind Dead Cells. It's said that this new Prince of Persia will be releasing in 2024 in some way, shape, or form, and will also be releasing on Steam. I am very excited about this one, and I haven't seen any footage of the game yet. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up, we're talking about a very interesting ROM hack. It's called Super Mario 64 Decades Later. And they say here, the project aims to recreate and reimagine vanilla Super Mario 64 levels from memory, and remove stars or sections that felt too repetitive or just weren't very fun. If you wanted to see this ROM hack in action, I'll drop a link to it in the description below, and feel free to check it out. And last up here, this is a fun one if you're a fan of Cuphead and you've got a PS Vita. It appears that a new native port of Cuphead is being worked on, and things are working. This is actually pretty impressive to be up and running. Now, this is currently in early access, and it's restricted to patrons of Patnos D, but I'm curious to see if this will be released on a broader scale and how development proceeds. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.